All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for tuning in for another episode of the Stivers Show. Excited my guest today. He's an attorney slash bodybuilder, and you can tell just by looking at him. So, but very excited. Rick Collins is as an attorney partner at Collins, Gann, McCluskey and Berry in New York. But also has a very interesting, so we were talking before, does criminal defense. His office does some personal injury stuff, but he's got a very interesting background, which I'll let him share. But Rick, good to have you on, man. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on. And we do have a lot in common, other than the fact that we both have beards. Yours may be permanent, mine comes and goes from time to time. But other than being lawyers, I think, as we were talking before, we both love what we do. So, and my story, to what extent it's helpful to particularly younger lawyers to kind of look at their career. I never really planned to be doing the area of law that I'm involved in now. It just sort of organically happened, no brilliance on my part, I assure you. I kind of came from a dual background. So my avocation was bodybuilding, fitness, nutrition, working out. I was a personal trainer. I ran a day manager at a gym. That was sort of what I did outside of my career toward law school and ultimately as a lawyer. Totally into nutrition, have a CSCS, Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist accreditation through NSCA. So that's sort of what I did outside of the law. And I never really thought about the possibility that would be something that I did as part of my profession, my vocation. So out of law school, and I went to law school here in New York, did well academically as an undergraduate, and I had two nickels to rub together as a kid. So for me, I got a full scholarship to law school, which enabled me to do it, and then took a job as a prosecutor. So putting the bad guys in jail, the track, the 5-year track as a prosecutor on all sorts of cases, from misdemeanors to robberies and serious drug sales. And then, like many lawyers, went to the other side, so representing people who are accused of crimes. And when you see both sides of that, you really have a more holistic view of how people wind up in the criminal justice system, some of its failures, and a lot of room for improvement in it. So I loved doing criminal defense, bread and butter criminal defense. And I did that for a few years. But something interesting happened, and timing plays such a big role in our lives, and sort of can dogleg our lives and our careers in an interesting way. And the year that I went into private practice was the same year that the United States Congress criminalized anabolic steroids, which up until then had been sort of this fringe thing in some strength and fitness communities, but really hadn't gotten any mainstream attention. When that happened, suddenly the people in the gyms, a community that I was familiar with, were transformed into federal drug criminals for the use of these things. And they didn't understand really, the change in the law or how it could impact them, arrests, convictions, things like that. And the folks in the criminal justice system had no idea, the profile, the usage patterns, how do we distinguish somebody using steroids from a heroin addict or meth head? And so I came into a position where I was basically able to bridge that gap. And so I started representing more people in the health and fitness community on steroid charges, on doping allegations for athletes in sport, on gradually into the sports nutrition community, representing nutrition companies and sports nutrition and dietary supplement and natural products companies, all in my sort of ballywick, my wheelhouse of health and fitness. So my practice and my law firm does other things. We've got some of the lawyers do personal injury. We've got an affiliation with a firm that does just probate and estate planning, like you do here, but here in New York. But my practice is sort of where health and fitness, and bodybuilding, hardcore fitness meet the law. And I love what I do. I couldn't be happier. If you as a young lawyer can find a way to integrate what you're passionate about, what you love to do, into what you do on a day-to-day basis, it doesn't get any better. Years ago, Sylvester Stallone had a nutrition company, and we did the work for him, so I got to meet him. You know, this icon. Years ago, I was introduced to, prior to his governorship, I was introduced to Arnold Schwarzenegger. So, you know, my sort of time frame is that when I was a kid, that was my inspiration to a lot of my, you know, bodybuilding. You know, when I was competing as a bodybuilder, I was reading the bodybuilding magazines, reading about Arnold, looking at his pictures, you know, aspiring. And so I was introduced to him almost 20 years ago for the first time. And I've spent a lot of time with him since. I've had the opportunity to sit in his office in above Shotzi on Main and in Santa Monica. And I've met him a number of times in my role in the bodybuilding world. And I represent, I'm one of the lawyers for the Pro League, which is professional bodybuilding. So the first time I met him almost 20 years ago, you could tell I'm not usually at a loss for words, right? You know, lawyers, words are our stock in trade, but I was starstruck, right? I was tongue-tied. You know, suddenly this icon is, you know, face to face with me. I'm looking at him. It's like, you know, a dream come true. And he puts out his hand, and somebody says, you know, Arnold, this is Rick Collins. And I put up my hand, and I do an impression of him, and it just sort of organically just, you know, he put out his hand, and I put my hand out, and I said, it's super fantastic to meet you. And he was like, you do an impression of me. I'm like, I do. He goes, it's super fantastic. And so, you know, we started with a laugh, and, you know, but for me, that's, you know, to have the opportunity to meet people, to, you know, who I've admired and looked up to, and so many people in UFC and mixed martial arts and so many areas sort of sports and fitness has just been fantastic. And I love what I do. I've represented people on cases where, you know, my particular set of skills combined with my knowledge of bodybuilding and other sorts of, you know, nutritional aspects can really make a huge difference in people's lives. And you know it as a lawyer, you know, when you can really transform somebody's, you know, path in a way that that you know has lasting effects and is enriching to them, you go to bed at night and you can't feel any better. So I appreciate you having me on to talk a little bit about, you know, what I do and to share some of these thoughts.
Yeah, well, first of all, that impression's awesome.
He liked it, so, you know, good. You know, I did it for the man himself, so thank you.
So I want to back up just a little bit because there's a lot of really cool stuff in there that you're right. I do think, you know, what we were kind of talking about before, there's a lot of unhappiness or just lack of maybe professional fulfillment in the legal space, because I think people have this idea what they should be doing, right? And I'm kind of saying back, I mean, sounds like somewhat similar background. I kind of fell into law school just happened chance. I didn't know anything about big law. That wasn't a term I knew about. You know, I knew nothing about it. But I think a lot of people tend to come into law school with some sort of idea, and then when you're in law school, you think you're supposed to go this specific route. I'm curious, did you know you wanted to go into law school, be an attorney? Was that something you knew, or did you just fall into it?
No, yeah, no, not at all. You know, there was a time, you know, as a teenager, I was going to be a professional bodybuilder, of course. But ultimately, you know, better sense prevailed. And
Maybe.
maybe, you know, my undergraduate degree was in psychology, and so if there was any sort of track, I probably was thinking about going into, you know, get a doctorate in psychology. And I was also a theater, you know, drama minor. So, and particularly trial lawyers, there's a skill set that you share with actors. And so I've done a lot of theater. I've done some film, some TV, some commercial stuff. I was in the very first season of The Sopranos. I was doing some acting gigs at the time, and as a side hustle, and just because I enjoyed it. And I got a call from an agent who said, well, there's this, come for an audition. You'd be playing a Jersey State trooper in a flashback episode from many years ago, and the name of the show is The Sopranos. And I'm like, so well, it hasn't hit the air yet. It's okay. Is it like an opera show about opera? And he's like, no, it's like a mafia kind of show. I'm like, name The Sopranos. It's not going to go anywhere. It's a bust. But I went for the audition and I got it. And I'm 2 seconds of me arrest the young Uncle Junior, if you know the show, and Johnny Boy Soprano, Tony's father. And then of course, when I see the show, I fell in love like so many in America and around the world. And so it was just this, so I have this tiny little tiny piece of Sopranos history, under my belt, and that's a cool thing. But I have various times thought about doing that because I love doing it. But no, law school presented itself. I applied. I took the LSATs, did well on them. Wound up offered a scholarship and said, okay, well, then let's do this and see where this leads. And again, I had no idea that my other passions in life, or at least one of my other passions in life, would become so integrated into what I did for a living. But sort of finding a way, if you can, to integrate those things into what you do, whether you're a lawyer or anything else, if you can find a way to integrate your passion to your vocation, it's a great gig.
Yeah, and so that's kind of what my next question is so you were a prosecutor, for 5 years, then went off on your own. Was that decision to start working in, the bodybuilding, your passion side, was that intentional? I mean, I know you said you kind of just fell into your lap, but at the point that you did realize, oh, hey, wait, I can do, I can market myself as this type of attorney, which, you've got a couple different websites, steroidlaw.com, and I think supplement counsel.com as well, which is genius from just a, marketing, standpoint. But, did you just intuitively think, oh, wait, there's something here, I want to just start marketing? Because I think a lot of people, that's where people get a little bit nervous, is they feel like, maybe they're into music and that's their thing, but they're like, yeah, I don't know if I can make money as an entertainment lawyer, or it's saturated. Like, what was that thought process to actually go in and say, oh, wait, this is what I'm going to do?
Right. Yeah. So, initially it was simply, I knew people in the community, in the bodybuilding and fitness community. So I started getting these calls, and I was in a position to try to help people. And at some point I started to say, well, I've got this unique skill set, that is unique to me and individual to me, that gives me an opportunity and an ability to help people with this particular problem in a way that I'm not sure, I don't know anybody else who could. So as that started to happen, at some point I said, you know what, this is an interesting thing. So, part of it was recognizing that there was an information gap between those two communities of the folks in the courts and the folks in the gyms. And so I created that website, steroidlaw.com, which is still up today, initially as sort of a way of providing information to bridge that gap, but also to say, you know what, this is my sweet spot. This is what I do. And if you need help, you can call me. And that was ultimately sort of the first step toward, if there was a marketing plan, so to speak, that was kind of the first step to it. That then led to the editor-in-chief at the time of Muscular Development magazine reaching out to me and saying, well, would you be willing to do a column for us? So I said, okay. And that was, okay, so now I could get, the services that I can provide in front of the people who desperately need these sorts of services. And so I started writing a monthly column, and I still write that up until this day. So, and now I've sort of also doing a video column as well for musculardevelopment.com. So that became the next step. And then the third step, I guess, was that the editor-in-chief then said, well, you need to write a book. And I'm like, in my spare time, I'm going to write a book. Okay. So I spent 2 years working on a book, which ultimately was called Legal Muscle. And the book is basically a book about anabolic steroids in American law, culture, politics, sports, entertainment, ethics, all aspects of what somebody who was either using anabolic steroids or thinking about using anabolic steroids would need to know. Everything contained in a 300 or 400 page book. And I also figured that book, in addition to providing an enormous amount of information that people really needed about their rights and what to do if you're arrested and how to respond if the police show up with a search warrant. But I also figured that anybody who had that book would potentially be either a potential client or a referrer of clients. And so I printed out 5,000 copies of that book, self-published it, and sold out all 5,000 copies. And, the book was, I think, $49.99 is what I sold it for. And it was worth certainly a $750 whatever consultation with a lawyer in that book. But I can say that book ultimately led to clients that, cumulatively well over $1 million in revenues as a result of that book basically being a calling card for the services that I would provide. So in terms of from a marketing standpoint, if you have something you're passionate about and a community that really needs your help, and maybe you can provide a help that nobody else can, then certainly writing, speaking, networking, creating your own website, trying to write for a magazine, being a columnist, or submitting op-ed pieces on your subject matter. And then ultimately, if you can write a book or get a chapter submitted for somebody else's book, and I've written a number of chapters for different books also, those are all ways of, you could be the best lawyer in or whatever profession you're in, but if nobody knows you're doing that and have this special skill set, you're not going to succeed. I do think that you need to have a skill set, but you also need to help a community that has a specific type of problem. You could think of yourself, well, I'm going to be the cat lawyer, because I just love cats. So I'm going to be all about cats as an attorney. Well, you would need to identify what it is about cat owners that requires your specific legal help. So you need sort of the combination of the skill set and an identifiable problem within a population. And if that works together, that's golden. You asked, what point. There came a point where I said to my law partners at the time, I'm going to really focus on steroid law. And up until then, no lawyer had ever even thought of that, right? I mean, the law had just passed in 1990. It wouldn't have been even relevant before that. And nobody had really thought about it since. And I think they probably looked at me like I was crazy initially, but I recognized that number one, I was passionate about it, so I wanted to do it, and I liked helping people in this community. And the reality is, a lot of my clients on those types of cases are, many become my friends on social media. I have an Instagram at Rick Collins ESQ, and many follow me there or follow me on other social media platforms, and they then become sort of my crusaders who go out there and tell others about me. Because if you believe in something and if you're passionate about something and you like your clients, and as a lawyer, to like your clients, even in a criminal defense capacity, is rare, right? Because for a number of reasons. But I do like my clients. They're the kind of guys that I would spot in a gym, or who I'd ask to spot me in a gym. So so if you can do that, that's really where you want to be.
Man, I got so many things for you, but I know we're running up on our time. I think that's, one of the things that I think is really cool though is, there was a little bit of a risk, it sounds like, and that's what I was going to ask you, because, when you had these partners and you're like, wait, I think I see something here that I'm going to go after and market myself as this. And I think that's a shift I've been seeing over the past couple of years, where you see with newer attorneys, they don't really want to go work be a traditional bankruptcy attorney or a contracts attorney. They're much more interested in working with the type of people that they want to, who they want to work with. And I think again, another thing that you hit on is you've used social media as a way to really kind of leverage that and get yourself out there, which I think, like it or hate it, you got to use it, I think. And a lot of, maybe more seasoned attorneys are kind of stuck in that old mindset of, they don't want to use it, don't see the value of it. But I think I've written a book myself. I'm a huge proponent of all those things that you're doing. I think is awesome. And I think there is an opportunity for a lot of these newer attorneys where they don't have to go the traditional route. I agree. I think there has to be a skill set. You can't just go say, hey, I'm going to go do this and then not know what you're talking about. You got to have the skill set, identify the market, make sure there's, are there enough cat owners who need legal services? I don't know, but I think
and what is that specific service that you can provide that, that makes your skill set relevant to that problem?
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. Well, and I know, I wonder, you're the immediate past president of the Nassau County Bar Association in New York. I think you said, 5,000 or so members, one of the largest in the country. And so maybe just since we're running up on our time here, maybe since we're kind of talking about, newer attorneys finding their passion, going after that, is there any, sort of maybe actionable pieces of advice that you give to, younger or attorneys who maybe have been stuck in a rut for a little while doing the same thing, and it's just they're not finding that fulfillment? I'm sure you've spoken with many about that before, but
yeah, I do. And I sort of tell my story of how it is that I found my niche and what I'm passionate about. I'm a big believer in bar associations. I'm a big believer in professional networking through bar associations. And the internet is great and social media is great. And I do a lot on social media. If you looked at my Instagram page, you'd see that, I try to, it's a combination of legal information, but also it's what I find interesting, what I find funny, other stuff about who I am as a person. And I think that, often potential clients are afraid of lawyers. People are afraid. Some people don't like lawyers, frankly. And so
I don't really like lawyers for the most part.
I know a lot of lawyers who say that. And so what I try to do is provide on my social media platforms just authenticity. This is who I am. And I think if you looked at my Instagram or any of my social media pages, you'd see I'm not fronting anything. I'm just sort of, this is, you hire me, you interact with me, this is who I am, this is what you get. But I do think, separate from sort of the internet, there's nothing like real world interaction. So if you're a young lawyer and you're in Miami or you're in Pittsburgh, wherever you are, there's a Miami or a Pittsburgh bar association. There's a state bar association, and then there's often local, whether it's at the county level or the city level. And this will be a bar association where lawyers, they're voluntary associations. So you'll have to pay a membership fee. But my feeling is it's a good investment, and that when you join a local bar association, not just to join and say you're a member, but to roll up your sleeves and get involved, whether it's to go to meetings, get involved in a committee, try to work on a report, interact with other lawyers, both within your area of specialty and outside your area of specialty. Because you may find that you'll interact with a lawyer in a different area of law and suddenly say, you know what, that interests me. That interests me more than what I'm doing, actually. That's something I could get passionate about. And you'll also make connections with other lawyers. And that sort of networking is really, especially in the real world, and as we're now kind of pulling out of COVID, and hopefully we'll soon have the opportunity to get back into that sort of real world connection, going someplace, sitting down, having a meal with other professionals, other lawyers. That I think is something I'd highly recommend to young lawyers.
Yeah, I think a lot of the unhappy lawyers tend to be doing like insurance defense, and they're the ones who are not going to bar associations because they don't really feel like they have the need. And it's like, I mean, kill me. That sounds like the worst, the worst of it.
It's almost like an isolating experience too. You're just sort of there wallowing in your own dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
And get out there and look for other opportunities.
Yeah. Rick, awesome, man. Love what you're doing. I think this was fantastic. If you want to, we'll put, your contact information, your social media, but any place you want, where can people find you, get in touch, learn more about you and everything?
Well, a great place is either rickcollins.com, which is my sort of personal website, or Instagram. Just follow me on Instagram. Let me know you're there with me, and I'll be happy to chat with you, Rick Collins ESQ, and I'll see you hopefully online as well.
Awesome. Rick, thank you, brother. Appreciate it, man. Talk to you soon.